There is a place in the northeast of England where the line between history and hauntings blur with each chilling breeze of the North Sea. The town's narrowing, winding streets are shrouded in mist, lit by a dim glow of ancient lanterns, while the haunting silhouette of an oppressive abbey looms high above on the cliff. And I know this because I've been there multiple times. It is a place where the eerie cries of seagulls mix with the crashing of waves against the jagged shore, creating a ghostly song that lingers long after dark. Tonight we will investigate these stories of the afterlife in the seaside town of Whitby. From the White Lady of St Mary's churchyard to a phantom coach that rolls through the streets, all the way down to the lighthouse. And of course with the links to the world's most famous vampire novel, Dracula. So, there's lots to get through in today's episode, so light a candle, grab your favourite haunted brew and join me as I uncover the ghosts of Whitby. Right, welcome back, Spook Crew. Now, Whitby holds a special place in my heart. I've been going off and on for the past few years. First time I visited was for my partner's brother's birthday, and I was camping on top of a hill not too far from Whitby Abbey, and the whole family are surprised by being there, but it was really cool. We sort of squeezed ourselves into this really small pub, which now I know to be pretty haunted. Had no idea that we were going to be there, and surprised him. It was a great day, all that, great night. Now, during this meal, at one point, actually, we all felt like we were being watched, and I couldn't quite explain it, but something within me was telling me to look towards the window, and and it sort of felt like we were being watched, and we did. I looked towards the window, and looking back at me in the rain was pale, cold faces, and I thought to myself, like, was I seeing some kind of ghost procession? But turns out it was one of the Whitby Ghost Walks looking into the pub as part of the walk. So that was about the spookiest thing that I experienced that first time I was there. A couple of years later, we headed back for a little spring trip this time with our little cat Lizzie. She loved her time in Whitby. She loved that little Victorian house we were staying in, it was really nice. But we looked out the window, across the bay was Whitby Abbey. It's strange, it's like looming over us even when we were on the other side of town. It is a great place. I just love Whitby. It's just so filled with history, and like you can just tell the streets, especially at night, like especially when it's dark. And we were there that second time in the spring, and people actually were going by and lighting like the gas street lights, and it gets to that sort of time of night and it just takes on a whole different life of its own. So if you've never been, go to Whitby. It's really good. I love it. But enough about why I love Whitby. Let's get into some of the history and why you should love Whitby too. Now, I might get some of these Roman names and Viking names wrong. We just have to deal with that. I'll try and cut it out, but to err is human. What are you doing, Liz? Trying to record here, Lizzie. It's like a little meerkat tail. What's this? Trying to record. Say hello, Lizzie. And back this way it goes. By 71 AD, Whitby had been conquered by the Romans, and eventually the settlement became known as Stranolshalha. When the Christian kings, it's something like that. I don't know. I'm reading it, but that's what's coming off. When the Christian king in Northumbria founded a monastery and abbey there. Now, in the following centuries, up until about the 18th century, it became known for fishing, whaling, shipbuilding, and mining of materials. Now. Sort of fast forward to 867 AD, the Vikings came to Whitby and destroyed, because they just destroyed everything. Love them for it. Destroyed the monastery. They renamed the area, and again, gonna butcher this name. I don't speak. What do they speak? Viking. Hivitbia, meaning the settlement that belongs to Hatfi. Later, the name was changed to the modern name Whitby, and the Vikings eventually settled peacefully there. Now, moving forward in the 18th century, the whaling industry was a dominating presence in the town, and its history is marked now by famous whalebone arches, which are pretty cool when you see them up close. I've been there; they're sort of opposite of the abbey. But yeah, fast forward to the late 1890s, we're whizzing through history here, and a writer would visit Whitby and change the landscape, the way that people see the place for many, many years to come. And that man, of course, was Bram Stoker, who was the author of the novel Dracula. Now, by the time he came to Whitby, Stoker was already planning a vampire tale. He used his time there to research and develop his ideas. Until his time in Whitby, his protagonist was going to be called Count Wampia, or Vampire. Thanks to some time spent in the Whitby Library, he uncovered the names we all know today. There, Stoker learned about Vlad Tepes, or Vlad the Impaler, as he's more commonly known. Vlad was dubbed Dracula, meaning son of the dragon and devil in the Wallachian language. Wallachia or Wallachia is the name of the historical and geographical region of Romania. The character of Dracula originated from Romania, and the real story begins when his ship wrecks on the beaches of Whitby. Now, if you wander through the graveyard at St Mary's Church next to Whitby Abbey, you'll find a tombstone of the man named Swales. This name, among others, was noted by Stoker during his stay. And yeah, if you read Dracula, you'll find that it's poor Swales who becomes Dracula's first Whitby victim. There are little bits of Whitby to be found throughout Stoker's novel, including, of course, our famous 199 steps to the Abbey. Dracula in dog form is shown to run up the steps after his ship wrecks on the beach. You'll also see references to the town's red roofs and noble ruin of the Abbey. Now, even through the story, Dracula was set in Whitby, there are no vampires or vampires reported here. However, the story has really helped shape the atmosphere of the town. And like I say, walking around Whitby, it's just so easy to be transported back in time. And yeah, the whispers of the shadows, some vampires, all add to its charm and sense that the paranormal is closer than you think. Now, that's enough of the history. Let's get into the main meat, or tofu if you're a vegan, of today's episode. Now, I wasn't able to find a specific date and year for the first story, so it must have been lost to time, but one of the most famous stories from Whitby is that of Gaddy Clark, also known as the Oyster Man of Whitby. Now, this is a haunting tale, and it begins on a cold, dark November night. Now, oysters may be considered a delicacy today, but they were once staples in towns across the UK, especially towns by the sea. The Oyster Man was a familiar sight, roaming the streets and calling out to sell his fresh catch. In Whitby, however, the tale of the Oyster Man is a tragic one. His voice is said to still echo along the town's cobbled streets. Now, in life, he would wander from pub to pub, calling out, "Oysters, alive ho!" Probably not as camp as that, but you get the gist, to entice customers. But one fateful night, he stepped into the Golden Lion, and a group of rowdy men mocked and jeered at him, and a man by the name of John Smith and his crew were drinking in the pub. You see, no one knew where John Smith called home, as he would disappear for weeks on end, but he would always return to Whitby. It was discussed in whispers where he would go. Some said he was a highwayman or a smuggler, and others think he was a millionaire who had sold his soul to the devil. But no one knew for sure. All that people knew is that he was bad news, and that you should keep away from him. Now, he rode around town on one of the many horses, and he would madly cackle as he did, apparently. The Oyster Man made his way over to John Smith's table, and was mocked and disrespected. The Oyster Man knew he'd make no sales there and turned to leave, muttering a quiet saying, or some would think curse, under his breath as he went. Unfortunately for him, one of the men heard and couldn't bear to be insulted. He snatched the oyster basket and threw it into the fire, and he grabbed the Oyster Man and threatened to chuck him into the flames as well. The man was, of course, the mysterious John Smith. The oyster man was terrified, apparently. I weren't there, but this is what they say. Even though he was small, he pulled out a tiny blade he carried for opening oysters and stabbed Smith. And to everyone's surprise, the oyster man delivered a killing blow, accidentally striking through the man's heart. Though not found guilty of murder in his trial, as it was seen that the oyster man was acting in self-defence, he never forgave himself for what he had done. He continued to sell his oysters in Whitby town, always avoiding the Golden Lion, but his cry of "Oysters, alive ho!" was forever changed. His guilt ate at him, and within a year he died of remorse. And in more recent times, and especially on bitter November nights, when the sea mist rolls in and the wind howls through Whitby's narrow streets, a lone figure is sometimes seen drifting between the pubs, a tattered sack slung over his shoulder. Those who have glimpsed him swear they hear his mournful cry, "Oysters, alive ho!" echoing through the streets, even though the streets are otherwise empty. But the old oyster man never lingers near the Golden Lion. He skirts around it, keeping to the shadows, as if he knows something lurks there, watching, waiting. Some say he fears the vengeful spirit of John Smith, the man whose wrath followed him from beyond the grave. Was it his ghost that drove the oyster man to madness, or his eventual death? Other people say that if you stand outside the Golden Lion at midnight and call out for oysters, you'll hear a ragged breath at your ear, followed by the slow shuffle of unforeseen footsteps behind you. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think I'll be going and doing that on my next trip to Whitby. Maybe I will. I'll go in November. We'll see. But, yeah. Poor oyster man. What a tragic story. Yeah, but now we move from the streets of Whitby down to the Western Pier Lighthouse. Many years ago, a huge storm was blowing through the harbour town. Now, I tried again to find a date for this apparent incident. However, I couldn't find anything. All I could find was the stories. But it was said that this huge storm was pummeling the town, and the lighthouse keeper realised that the light in the lighthouse was not on, and the chances of a shipwreck in this storm was huge. He made the decision that he needed to get that light on. He put on his coat and boots and set off towards the lighthouse on the West Pier. The lighthouse keeper's clothes were dripping wet by the time he entered the lighthouse. Still, he carried on, dripping rain falling from his clothes and onto the stairs as he ascended them. He put on the light, looked for a few moments, and in the safe knowledge that his job was done, and then maybe that he had saved some lives that night. Unfortunately, the irony was he couldn't save his own life. As he made his way back down the stairs, he slipped. By the time he hit his head by the entrance, he was dead. Some brave souls who venture up the West Pier on a stormy night have caught glimpses of the brave lighthouse keeper as he carries on a mission from beyond the grave. Now, I did find one recollection in the 1950s, and that of a young girl who reported that she had seen the body of a man laying at the bottom of the stairs of the lighthouse, and in distress and asking for help. When she asked her mother to help him, her mother couldn't see anybody. Could this have been the ghost of the old lighthouse keeper? And fast forward to modern times, many who visit the lighthouse speak of the same horrifying sight. A broken figure sprawled across the cold floor, his limbs twisted unnaturally, and his face contorted in silent terror. But an even more unsettling vision haunts the pier. A lone man, his coat billowing in the wind, rushes towards the lighthouse, clutching a dim lantern that barely cuts through the dark night, and his footsteps echo hollowly on the wooden boards, but no matter how fast he moves, he never reaches the door. Now, I've actually been there, and I've only been there in the day though, mind you, and it was still pretty, I wouldn't say it was creepy. I mean, I don't have a fear of the sea. It's like, I can't think of the word. What's the word I'm trying to look for? It's like the sound is like deafening, like the waves crashing, especially on the North Sea. It's so rough. And yeah, I remember walking on that pit is in the daytime, that pier head towards the lighthouse. It's a fair bit out in the sea, especially when the tide's in, but like the slats aren't all together, so like there's gaps in them, so if you look down as you're walking you can like see the waves underneath you, and yeah, it weren't for me. I got to the lighthouse, was like, okay, this is nice, it's pissing down a rain, the waves It's very noisy. Don't like it. And yeah, that was that. Nothing scary happened, but yeah, I could see how on a stormy night, how people could trick themselves into seeing something. Or is it the lighthouse man? Have you heard this story before? Have you seen the lighthouse man then? Pop it in the comments below. Let me know. Now, lastly, on our stroll around haunted Whitby, I am taking us to St Mary's Churchyard and the surrounding area. One of the most famous ghostly legends linked to St Mary's Churchyard. I can't say churchyard. Atop of the 199 steps is that of the Phantom Coach. Now, again, it's always on a stormy night in Whitby, of course it is. On stormy nights, when the mist rolls in from the sea, locals and visitors alike have reported hearing the sound of thundering hooves and the rattling of carriage wheels echoing up the ancient steps. Some even claim to have seen a spectral black coach drawn by ghostly horses, racing towards the churchyard. Now, the idea for this apparition is that because Whitby was once full of sailors, there came unfortunate times where sailors would die on dry land and be buried in the earth rather than a traditional sailor's burial at sea. Now, widows and families of the lost souls would often claim to find that the graves would be visited on the third night after their burial by the bar guest coach. The witnesses to the hauntings site have said headless horses pull the coach, because they're always headless, obviously. The passengers of the coach are the skeletal remains of sailors who come to pay their respects to the deceased seaman. And after the soul of the dead sailor is aboard the Burgess coach, the coach sets off again, riding through the graveyard and then driving off into the darkness towards the sea. Now, I don't know, I quite like this story. I know, again, it's really what's the word I'm looking for? It's sort of, you're going off eyewitness accounts. There's no historical evidence of people visiting the graves 3 days after a seaman was buried. And if you've seen St Mary's Churchyard, I'll try and put a photo up. It's right atop the cliff, so when it says that the coach just drives straight off of the graveyard, it's literally straight off a cliff into the sea. Yeah, straight to Davy Jones's locker. But yeah, I went up there a couple of years ago in the spring, and like I said, I don't really like the sea, but I love watching it, especially in the North Sea, because it's just like constantly battering if the weather's bad. And yeah, I went up there with my REM pod. I was like asking out if there's any spirits there. I mean, it's the middle of the day, wasn't expecting anything. It was just something nice to do. And yeah, it was a really cool churchyard, really cool church. And yeah, I love Whitby. You need to go. This should be like, Whitby should be paying me to for this as an advertisement. You just need to go. It's great. But yeah, that's a wrap, Spook crew. I know it's a bit of a shorter one today, but yeah, I just wanted to talk about Whitby. There's loads more I could have gone into, but I'm still sort of figuring out my feet, how much to, how many stories to go through, how long I want my episodes to be. But did you enjoy it? Let me know in the comments. I hope you did, because I loved researching it, writing it and recording it. And yeah, thanks for joining me on this journey beyond the ordinary into the unknown. Have you been to Whitby? It's great, isn't it? Let me know your favourite spooky spot in the comments. And if you haven't been, what's your favourite spot from today's episode? What's your favourite story? Was it the tale of the doomed oyster man, the phantom coaches, or the cursed lighthouse worker who died trying to save others from the storm? Thanks for tuning in to Spooky Island Radio, where the whispers of the unknown never fade. Remember, every like and share and subscribe brings us close to the truth, one eerie step at a time. Now until next time, stay curious, stay spooky, and remember, the island is always watching.